Newsroom. Next Sunday, France votes in the first presidential election since Europe's worst financial crisis in decades hit. But with the current crop of candidates failing to excite the voters, the prospect of record abstention looms. And so, on the final weekend of campaigning, the two frontrunners staging mass rallies in the capital, the aim to convince those tempted to vote with their feet. With the incumbent trailing badly in the polls, Nicolas Sarkozy also made promises, breaking the silence he'd said he'd keep to his German counterpart and calling for a major reform of the European Central Bank, an institution whose mandate's always been to focus on inflation. To think that at one point, Angela Merkel was scheduled to campaign for Sarkozy. Now, he finds himself on a collision course with her. Remember, he's not even the front runner. There's socialist François Hollande. He's promised a complete rethink of last December's hard-fought EU austerity pledge and offered up a laundry list of fresh spending to spur growth, spending that'll leave the French state living well above its means, as the means that it set out at least to its Eurozone partners. Is this all campaign rhetoric, or will the French elections spell doom for all the belt-tightening that's been promised this past year? How will markets react after the May 6th second round? And why, with the stakes so high, are the politics-crazy French giving a Gallic shrug to the candidates that are on offer? Today in the France 24 debate, we're wondering whether the French have gone rogue on Europe and perhaps on their politicians. And with us to talk about it, Aude Baron. She's the editor of Le Plus, the interactive website of French news magazine Le Nouvel Observateur. Welcome back, Aude. Welcome as well to German journalist and writer Jacqueline Hénard, Thomas Uday of European think tank Europe Nova. Thank you for being Europa Nova. Excuse me, Europa Nova, and from Brussels, Gertjan Wumpf of economic think tank the Bruegel Institute. Welcome to you, sir. The France 24 debate, which you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, where you can find us at François F24. You saw those images a moment ago, Sunday, before tens of thousands on Paris's Place de la Concorde. Nicolas Sarkozy reversing a pact that he made last November with the German Chancellor and the Italian Prime Minister. That pact was not to discuss the European Central Bank. He did more than discussed it. He challenged the ECB's brief.
If the central bank doesn't support growth, we will not have enough growth. The crisis, and my European convictions make me say this, has shown us the limits of the Maastricht Treaty rules.
Gertjan Wolf, were you caught off guard? Were you surprised by this statement?
Yeah, I think the statement indeed came a bit as a surprise because, of course, Sarkozy had been seen very much hand in hand, I would almost say, with the German Chancellor. So that certainly was a surprise. On the other hand, I think he raises certainly an issue that is worth debating, which is the issue of do we have the appropriate overall macroeconomic policy mix in the Eurozone. And, I think it is clear that fiscal policy overall is not very supportive. So, there may be some case for further action by the ECB. On the other hand, if you ask an expert what should the ECB actually do, I think it's not easy. I mean, they don't have that much scope at the moment.
You say they don't have that much scope at the moment. So what do you think of Sarkozy's proposal to give it more scope?
Well, I think their limits are really determined by the limits of the economic situation and the limits of how we organize ourselves. At the moment, we do not have a centralized Eurozone. We do not have a centralized finance ministry. So whatever the ECB is doing has then redistributive effects, and that's really the limit. It has redistributive effects from the northern countries to the southern countries, and that is, of course, heavily opposed in the northern countries.
Heavily opposed, and yet this Monday on sister station Radio France International, socialist frontrunner François Hollande agreeing, in effect, with Sarkozy about the ECB, a nod to Hollande's long-held pledge of a modified stability pact that would include a growth clause.
There has to be dialogue between the governments and the European Central Bank. The ECB changed and decided to give liquidity support to banks, so it could do the same with states, under certain conditions, of course. I want central banks like the ones in the US and in England, which intervene massively when there's speculation, rather than those that waste time and hurt states.
Thomas Uday, you heard there what Guthram Wolff said about the reluctance of, shall we say, nations in the north of Europe to such an idea. How serious is François Hollande? Is this rhetoric or does he mean it?
I think there is, of course, a short-term tactic about it, because François Hollande was the first on this idea, but Sarkozy now is coming also to it, saying that the austerity cannot save Europe. And when we see what's happening in Spain, and a lot of the experts are now saying that there have been a window of opportunity within the last 2 months after the euro crisis stabilized a bit. And I don't know if you heard that the famous economist Paul Krugman told yesterday that Europe was committing suicide now, continuing with this austerity policy. So, I mean, there is a real dimension on growth and how to get more means to the European dynamic and integration with this ICB role enlarging. But of course, there is also this short-term tactic for both candidates. And I think they don't have the right way to put the problem on the debate, on the public debate.
What is the right way to present this debate?
Well, we can see as I mean, that's really our position. We are fighting against this. They all have a national view. You know, they're just talking to their electors, and they are not. They pretend that the world has not changed, whereas everyone knows now that we're in a globalized world, and what is needed is a real European governance and something that is going fast. The markets are waiting for this, and we'll see within the next days and months what's going to be their reply.
2 weeks ago, Jacques Lénard, there was the new head of the European Central Bank who said the worst of the crisis is over. Thomas here mentioning a moment ago how over the weekend there were protests that sometimes violent over in Spain. A window of opportunity seems to be closing. Are the Germans feeling the heat on all this?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say it's now all over. The window of opportunity is completely closed. And the Germans are, I don't know in how far they take note of what is going on and how very nationalistic the tone has been in France this last weekend, I mean, obviously in Germany, everybody's following the French election campaign because we know in Germany that how could Germany proceed in Europe? With whom to go on in Europe if not with France? If France becomes very nationalistic, Germany is having a big problem. I am not shocked. Thomas Uday said yes, but they are talking to their voters, the candidates. I'm not surprised. I do not object to candidates talking to their voters. What I do object to is if there is sort of a feeling of mission that comes along with it. I don't know, if you translate the words both of the candidate Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande about France's role in Europe, France's future role in Europe, saying l'Europe attend la France, Europe is waiting for France. We are the ones who can really turn things around. I'm not sure that this is a good position for negotiating, and I'm not sure France is in a position to start a discussion from this point of view.
Let's turn back the clock 5 years. Nicolas Sarkozy is elected. The first day he's in office, his day of his inauguration, he gets on a plane, goes to Berlin, and has dinner with Angela Merkel to show that the Franco-German couple is going to be united and strong. Getting back to what Guthram Wolff says, you share the surprise over the fact that Sarkozy, on the final weekend of campaigning, is suddenly saying, well, maybe the European Central Bank, in effect, he didn't say it like overtly, but in effect, the Germans are going to have to review this all focusing on inflation and maybe start looking at growth instead.
Well, it's very interesting to make the parallel with the beginning of his mandate and that famous dinner, because what Nicolas Sarkozy is trying to show is that he's controlling the situation. And since a few months, for not saying for a few years, he's just being, he's being passive in front of the crisis, trying to not control, but to do what he can to improve the situation. And as a miracle, just 1 week before the election, he just come back on the stage and say, I'm the master, and you can just count on me and you can trust me and I will, move on just chess game. But it's only, it's only words, it's only communication, and you can see that dinner with Angela Merkel, it was very positive in terms of communication, but on the politics stage, it didn't have so many, consequences.
5 years on, do you agree that the couple never really did gel?
I don't know. I'm not sure that there was only everything was only attitude and communication and passiveness. I would say that France was not very active in following through reforms on the inside France, but I think that the presence of France and the voice that France had in the European debate went well beyond its economic clout. So I'm not sure about that. And when you talk about the Franco-German relationship, I think the beginning was very spectacular. It was a demonstration that the Franco-German relationship is going to continue. Actually, there was not very much closeness, which is not astonishing because the Franco-German relationship is difficult. It always was difficult and it always will be difficult. But I think that it has become more efficient because both have gotten to know each other, the Chancellor and the President. They know how they function and they have found a useful working relationship. This is not to say that everything was fine, but I think that there has been a lot of progress compared to the beginning where it was only pictures.
It was only a showcase. So that's for the incumbent. And Guillaume Wolff, he's not doing so well in the polls right now. When François Hollande, if François Hollande becomes the president on May the 6th, are you expecting him to go to Berlin for dinner?
Well, I think these are very difficult predictions to make, but I think one thing is absolutely clear is that, France and Germany need to work as a couple, and it's also clear that, France is, of course, by now the country that is smaller than Germany, and, so to some extent there is, a shift in power that we have seen, and I think the one thing in terms of reforms and that France really needs to tackle. I mean, there's basically two things, which is one is really about public finances, which I think in France have been for quite some time not really under control and properly checked. And the other thing is competitiveness. I mean, the French economy, French business is losing competitiveness towards the rest of the world, towards Germany. And, that is certainly an imbalance that needs to be addressed. I mean, there's, of course, a question of symmetry here. And, Germany certainly has also a role to play in the rebalancing of Europe. But certainly it's going to be for either president, whoever is going to win this election, it's going to be crucial to close the economic gap and to close the competitiveness gap towards Germany, because that's the core of the European project. And if that doesn't work, if that that rift gets larger, it's going to be big stress for Europe and for the Eurozone.
We can drive home that point by showing you two charts courtesy of The Economist. The first one, this was published a few weeks back. This should help concentrate the minds. The first graph is one on public spending, and you see that the French have been living above their means for quite some time. It's not just in the past year. There you see France's public spending as a percentage of GDP above even that of Italy, the UK, Germany, everybody. This since the past 5 years, since 2007. And this, again, is a percentage of GDP. Then there's the cost of labor that was mentioned a moment ago by Guillaume Wolff. And there, if you look at the unit labor costs, if you put them at the same level back in 2002. Here's where they've gone since. Thomas Uday, the business leaders that you speak with, what do they say? How do you rectify the balance on that chart?
Well, there is a lot to do, and the candidates are not taking the right direction, of course.
So how do you reduce labor costs?
Well, you have to first, there have been some proposals that have been made by Nicolas Sarkozy with the social VAT that were meant to reduce at some point labor costs for companies. But it's not enough. And of course, there needs to be a real investment and innovative plan at European level. So for me, there's really two lies that have been going on during this campaign that are showing that the candidates are not tackling the right issues is the competitiveness and the public spending, of course, that we've seen that are right above the average of the Eurozone. And the rest, and the second part, is saying that France can do it by itself. And we know, we can't. And I will just mention Laurence Parisot, the boss of
business leaders,
the head of the business leaders in France, who's been several times saying, we need United States of Europe. We need to go further in terms of economic integration. Otherwise, it won't work. We know how growth will come back when growth is working on the innovation investment, and on the other hand, on the number of active population. And with the aging population of Europe, there is two main subjects that have not been really discussed during this campaign. On the one hand is innovation and the way Europe can help, and on the other hand is migration and the way also we can at European level manage a real migration policy.
And Jacqueline Hénard, the German model, which has been talked about, it's come with sacrifices for those who don't earn much, women not in the workplace. The German success story has also the flip side to its coin.
It has a flip side. It's a question that is very much discussed in France, where generally the public has become aware that Germany is no longer as rich as it used to be. It is very wealthy. It is doing well on exports, on competitiveness. Employment is good. There have been pay rises recently, but there has been a drawback to the reforms. On the other hand, I would say that the reforms that have been developed by the Schröder government, they were very strategic, long-term reforms of the labor market.
So long-term thinking.
Long-term.
And we're going to see whether or not it's short or long-term thinking when it comes to the French. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. This is the France 24 debate.